Hi, it's me again. Sorry. Today, or not today, but this time, I don't have my framework philosopher hat on me. Instead, I go with the full stacker hat, not to be mixed up with the full slacker hat, that's a different thing, but full stack, because we're going to talk about real full stack here, both React and Java at the same time. More specifically, assuming, like I guess most of you are, actually, do you agree you are Java developers? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, most of you think you are Java developers, and then are you front-end developers? Yeah, some React developers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, okay, well, yeah, I got it right. Great. So really, the question is, how do I add just a little bit of React? Not going all in on the React thing, but maybe you want to add a little bit of React to your existing Java application, your Flow application, to make it even better. Or maybe you don't, because it's not always the right answer. Sometimes it's completely valid to just ignore everything Vaadin says about React, because if you're using the Java version, it works awesomely for you, then why change anything? One thing I have noticed, and now trying to kind of correct for that, is that when we say that this is a new shiny thing, we are really excited about it, and then people kind of think that, oh, then we also must do it. That's not always the case. Instead, you need to kind of understand what's important for you, what are your circumstances, do these things that Vaadin or any other vendor that they talk about, do they really apply to us? So I'm not only going to show how to use React, but also starting out with a couple of slides about should you do it at all? What are the reasons why you should consider it and why you maybe shouldn't? I already in the morning mentioned the State of Frontend survey. I mentioned that 86% of front-end developers use React. So that might be a reason to consider React. Furthermore, kind of out of those who use it, 82% say that they like using it. So that's a quite good sign. And also, out of the remaining 14% in that survey who didn't use React, roughly half of them said that they would actually want to learn it and start using it. So I think we can summarize that React is quite popular. What this means, it's two things. One is there's lots of existing React code out there. Two different categories. Companies have built applications in React. They have existing kind of in-house UI components in React. They might want to reuse those. Also, other aspect of existing React code is NPM registry, where you can download any kind of JavaScript front-end third-party module and just use it in your application. There's lots of React things there. If you have some very specific UI component need, chances are you will find a React component for it. And chances are, if it's something very specific and it's only available for one technology, that one technology is React, because it's just so widely used. Probably the second most widely used is to find it as a generic web component or a jQuery plugin. Those also work very well with Vaadin, but still I would just gut feeling say that React is even more common. Then another thing with React's popularity is there's React developers everywhere. Maybe not in this room, but actually I think he's somewhere in this room. Yes, there he is. Matthias, he said that, I don't know if he tested it, but he said that if you're in Berlin and you throw a stone, chances are that you will hit a React developer. So maybe that's not exactly how it is, but still you get the point that if you are a company, you are recruiting people, recruiting developers, front-end developers, you will come across lots of React developers. Maybe you already find yourself in that situation. Your company maybe already has one team or two teams or 15 teams using React, and then also being able to, as a Java Vaadin Flow developer, being able to work together with those might be useful. Then the last reason I would say for considering to use React is just for sake of using client-side technologies in general. So then it doesn't matter, do you use React or jQuery or lit or whatever, because it's just UI logic in the browser is the thing. Why is that? One thing is, if you want to do something that is really kind of close to what the browser itself does. So this is just a simple example. If I want to create this HTML structure from Flow in Java, I need to use a couple of lines of code for it, whereas the kind of native representation of this same thing in HTML in any client-side technology, it's just more compact, it's more natural. The same if you want to use some browser API, maybe there's a Flow integration for it, maybe you have to add it yourself using execute.js, but it becomes asynchronous, maybe in the wrong place, maybe becoming kind of inconvenient if you need to go back and forth between the server and the browser to deal with things. So that's also a reason. Maybe related, one small reason that I also talked about this morning is that React has this really great UI state management thing where you just update the state and things update automatically. You don't have to manually say that this component should update and that component should update. But that's something we will fix, I hope. Then some reasons that you might think lead you to using React, but I think they are not necessarily valid reasons. First one is latency. Actually, let's show this live. So there is this thought that if every single user interaction needs to go through the server, then it might not be a good user experience. Actually, this example now runs on the US East Coast with the server, and as you see, we got a 98 millisecond latency. And I can very well play Tetris on that latency without any problem. I also tried, we have another server on US West, which was kind of something like 180 milliseconds latency. That was a bit painful, but this one going to the West Coast in the US is kind of quite smooth. I mean, well, let's not look at me doing that now. But point being, in most cases, it's completely fine to have that 100 millisecond latency, which is, if you have, most of you have kind of users, customers only on one continent because it's only within one company or something, that's completely fine. If you have actually all over the world, maybe it's still fine to just have servers in one place, but it's not also unreasonable to have one server on each continent. And then you will basically be below 100 milliseconds for everyone. Also, many use cases, they don't need latency. Maybe if you're kind of doing lots of drag and drop, for instance, that's one thing that is a little bit sensitive to latency, but otherwise, probably you don't need it just for the sake of the latency. Another thing is memory usage. So when you're using Flow, you end up with the whole component tree, or a copy of the whole component tree for each active user in memory on the server. Usually that's somewhere between 100 kilobytes and 1 megabyte of server-side RAM per active user, which I did the math. I went to Amazon, looked at what's the cheapest EC2 instance I can get for each kind of memory size, and then I did the math that how many users could I support by that. And the end result is that, well, it's a little bit cheaper and more expensive on the edges, but kind of in the sweet spot there in the middle, you can easily do for 50 cents per month, you can have 100 concurrent users, which means that if you got 10,000 concurrent users, then that's kind of $50 per month, which is still nothing compared to what it costs to have a developer. You can, if you go really crazy to the far right, I mean, the biggest instance on Amazon right now has 3 terabytes of memory. So that's kind of 30 million users with that 1 megabyte per user ballpark. So that's probably enough for most use cases. That's about why you should or shouldn't use React for your Java application. Then if you look at how to do it, this again I showed this morning about all the different ways you can mix and match. Most of these are not really interesting. First off, we can drop all the ones when you're using Flow together with Flow or Hilla and React together with each other. Then we remain with 4 use cases, but out of these we can drop the 2 where we have lots of Hilla, lots of React, and want to add a little bit of Java UI, and we remain with the two cases from the title. We got lots of Java and want to add a little bit of React. Either into your Flow components or Flow views also, you can add a React component. Or the other way is, I've got a Flow application, I got my main layout is implemented in Java with Flow, and then I want to add a single Hilla view to that to be able to, maybe that's some special use case that actually benefits from using client-side technologies. Those are the things we're gonna look into, and now let's start the actual action. So here I got my very awesome application. I just got it from start.vaadin.com and made a couple of fixes, so I can say hello and it says hello. Let's make this so we can see both at the same time. Let's try to hit that. Actually, come on. Ah, there we go. Come on, like so. And up you go, and back there. Okay, that's what I did. So, I mean, this is Flow code, you all know it. Before we actually go into that though, let's take a short primer in Typescript. Because when you're gonna use React, I recommend doing that with Typescript, or we recommend that. And it's mostly just JavaScript, and JavaScript is mostly just like Java, but there's just kind of a couple of interesting or potentially confusing things that I want to show you. So if we just create a variable here, we of course use the const keyword since it's written only once. Just kind of create some value somewhere, create that as a function. If I here just return, let's say I return, come on, I return 1. Very complicated here. What Typescript automatically, without having to do anything, Typescript can see that, oh, now the type of this value variable, it's number. Because that's kind of, you don't, with Typescript usually you don't have to even type out the types. The Typescript compiler can just infer them. If I pass a value to this method, then that's one of the cases where it actually needs to be declared. So the syntax here is just option, or always the variable name and then optionally colon and the type. If I remove this, then it will actually still work. I get a warning saying that this now is implicitly the any type, which is kind of saying that it can be anything and Typescript doesn't care. But then we can get to some really interesting things, because if I do an if here, if input.length 0, then we return just a 0, else we return some string. What's the type of the value variable now? That's quite interesting, because actually Typescript sees that there's 2 potential values of this type. Either it's a 0 or then it's the string foo. Nothing else is kind of possible here, which means that here we can do if value equals, no, if value not equals 0, then because if I here do value dot to autocomplete, the editor sees that, well, these are the only things you can do on both the string foo and the number 0. Nothing else is kind of makes sense there. But if I move this inside this if block, then suddenly, because Typescript knows that, well, it can be 0 or a string and it's not 0, so then obviously it's a string, and then I get all the string methods here. So that's, I think, a quite cool thing with Typescript. Was there anything more I wanted to show? No, I don't think so. I mean, the really basic thing is you got this colon and some type, and those types then can be very complicated, very, very interesting inferred, but in most cases you don't need to care. Let's empty this so it doesn't cause any problems. So now what we want to do, we want to add a Hilla view to this application. Right now we only here in the menu, actually let's keep it like this. In the menu we just have this flow view and nothing else. So to add a Hilla view, we need to, add a Hilla view. Here in the SRC main front end, we can just add views / Hilla view.tsx, for instance. And then here we just do, like always in React, export default function. Because in React, actually, let's give it a name, Hilla view. In React, and let's return something. In React, every component is actually just a function, a render function that is run to kind of show what's there, and then export default just makes it available. Now when I do this, nothing happens, unfortunately, because we are now, according to Copilot, this info panel says that front-end hot swap is disabled. We are just using a pre-built bundle here. So when we first start adding any client-side things, we need to restart the server once. Because now when we start the server again, when there's a Hilla view present, then it will actually start Vit, which is a front-end building tool. It starts in dev mode, which means that it live on the fly all the time. Whenever I change anything, it live updates what's there. So now let's see. Yes, it's up and running again. Actually, let's verify because it started so quick. Or then I was just talking for so long. Now it says, yes, front-end hot swap enabled using Vit. Great. Disable Copilot. And now we should actually also have our Hilla view here in the menu, just like that, because now anything we add to the front-end / views directory that exports a function that looks like a React render function is actually a component or a view. A little bit small here, but you might see on the upper left corner that the name or the URL of this view now is /Hilla view, and that comes straight from the name of the file. We also see that it gets Hilla as the entry in the menu. That's derived here from the name of the function, but then it, just like with the flow router also, it removes any view prefix. We can configure these. So if I also export here a const named config, so this is a magic name, you just need to remember it. We can also say that the type is view config, so then we get auto-completion for it. So here I can, for instance, say that the title of this is my Hilla view, and then also, no, we're an object, so it's a colon. And then we can also say that let's have a menu configuration, let's put an icon there. I don't remember the icon name, so let's just copy paste this one. There we go. So now with this update, yeah, now we have the new name here in the menu, we got an icon and so on. So in this way you can configure all these things. The way this works actually is in the main layout nowadays, starting from Vaadin 24.5. If you go to startvaadin.com and download a new project, then the main layout there, it contains these lines of code, which basically fetches the menu configuration from where Flow has collected them from both Flow and Hilla views. Flow views need to be annotated with at menu, Hilla views are automatically there. And then there's just some very simple logic that loops through these and actually add those navigation items. So now we've got a Hilla view. Let's make it do something interesting. Let's create the same hello world example. Actually, let's navigate it there, yes. So we need a vertical layout, just like in Flow. We need a text field. And let's give it a label, name. Let's actually save and see what happens. Yes, let's give this a theme padding, like so. Yes, much better. And then let's add a button that says, say hello. Great. And now we want to make this do something. And we want to make it actually go to the server, send the name to the server, and get a greeting back. So for that, we can create a service for it. We put it here in the application root, or kind of the same place as the application Java file. No, actually, that's not where it is. No, it's in the right place. So hello service. And here we're going to put a browser callable annotation on it, which says that everything in this service should be also callable from the browser. That might be a security issue. We fix that by saying anonymous allowed, because then it's fine that it's a security issue. And what we do here is just create this service method, gets a string. Come on, string. I mean, you can't believe how difficult it is to type at this place. It's unbelievable. This is the name. And then we return hello plus the name. Very complicated stuff. The magic here is, just while I'm talking here, Hilla actually saw that, hey, now we got a new browser callable service. Let's generate Typescript to call that from the Hilla view. So we can go into the Hilla view for this button. Let's make this wider. We can add a click listener. Here we get an event, and there we're going to do hello service.greet. And here we immediately see that, well, this greet, it takes name, which is a string or undefined, and then it returns a promise of a string or undefined. Let's just put something here now, like, well, like this, because we're going to fix those undefineds. In Java, the default for now is that, well, anything can be null. In TypeScript, the default is that nothing is null or undefined unless you explicitly ask for it. So in this case, I'm just going to say that this isn't, I promise I won't do any nulls here, and I don't expect any nulls here. And just based on this, Hilla will regenerate the service, so now you actually can see that the name is just a string. One thing to mention here also is one of the biggest challenges when you jump between Java and TypeScript is that arrow. Because in JavaScript or TypeScript, it's this kind of arrow with an equal sign, but in Java, you do it with a dash. And I never remember which way is which, but luckily I've got a memory rule. It's based on two stereotypes. The first stereotype is that JavaScript developers are hipsters. The second stereotype is that hipsters care very much about equality. So therefore, in JavaScript, the arrow is with an equal sign. What we got here, though, is this greeting, it returns a promise, so it's an asynchronous result. We will eventually get the thing. We can actually mark this callback as async, and then we can just do result, and then we await it, and there we go. And now let's just see that we actually got it right. Console log that result. So now if I open a console here, let's make it a little bit bigger. Remove all the other things. I just click the button and it says hello Leif, because I still had that hard-coded here. So let's fix that as the next thing. What we need to do here, and this is maybe the one place where I prefer the flow way, because we want to get the value out of the text field. In flow, we would just say field.getValue. But in this React model, we don't have any instance to actually get that value from. So instead, we need to take a detour. We need to say that let's create a state variable as a signal, of course. And then whenever the value in the text field changes, we update the state variable. And then we can read the state variable value in this click handler. So here in the render function, we do name is a signal. And let's put just empty string as the default value. So then Typescript also know that the type of this signal, it's a string signal. And then we say text field on value change. We get an event, and then what we do is we're gonna do name.value equals event.detail.value. And then finally here in this greeting, now we can just pull the value out of the signal, so name.value is what we pass there. Now if we save this, need to wait a little while. Boom. Actually, let's take another name just to see that it's not the hard-coded value. Now if I put Bob there, we get hello Bob back from the server. Last thing we're going to do in this view is to also make it show the values in the UI, not just logging it to the console. So to do that, we need more UI state, like this. In this case, it's a signal with a list of values. Here we actually need to tell Typescript that this is a string list and not just any kind of list or an array. And then let's actually put just a test value there. Then we can map over the, no, not map, but map, greetings.map, no, value.map. We can map over those, so looping over them. We got a greeting. Actually, let's put it like this. And my shift key is a little bit broken. That's why I usually miss the quotes. And then here we need to return something. So let's just return a span with that greeting value. But like you remember, in the morning, Mark showed you that you also need to give a key. I don't want to use the greeting as a key, because if I greet 2 times with the same name, it will be the same value, and that will lead to explosions. So in this case, I can just cheat a little bit and use the loop index. So then I give it a key, which is the index. And now when I save, I need to refresh a little bit, and now we actually get that test value there. And then the last thing we do is, when we get the result back, we actually add that to the list. So greetings.value, and then now it would be tempting to say array.push, to just add that new value into that array. That won't work, because the way state management in all these client-side frameworks work is by reference. Only when you change the reference to the value, then it realizes that something has updated, but it doesn't kind of add listeners on every piece, on every child of the child of the child inside that data. So what we need to do here is that we need to create a new array. It first contains all the old values, and then also at the end it contains the new one. So in this way, we create a new array instance, assign that as the value of the signal, and then the state management will actually see what happens. So now with this done, I can say hello Leif, and I can say hello Bob, I can say hello Create, and I mean I can go on forever, but this is the way you use Hilla in your, I mean you can use Hilla standalone of course, but also just kind of add one single file to your Flow application, restart the server, and then you are good to start using adding Hilla views also, and use all the features of Hilla, like this auto-generated browser callable service and so on. Then let's switch gears to the other thing, which was adding a React component to Hilla, to a Flow view. I'm going to pick a color picker. So React color picker, yes, I've searched for that before. And this one I know happens to be a great one. So this is a very simple color picker. It's only 2.8 kilobytes, so it must be great. It's got this npm dependency that we need to install, and then it looks like just a couple of lines of code. So I think I will manage to do that. We first need to add a Java class, basically the component class, the Flow API for this color picker. So let's just create a colorpicker.java. This extends React something something. Yes, that's the one. And then to make this work, we need to add annotations because we're Java developers. We add one annotation for the npm dependency. I mean, we could do npm install, but it's so much cooler with annotations. npm package, we need to give it the value, which is the name of the dependency, and then the version, which we have here. And then we need to add more annotations. The way the integration works is that we're going to create very soon a small client-side integration that actually takes this React component and makes it available as a web component, which means that it will have a tag name. So we're going to say that whenever from Flow we create an instance of the color picker element or component, Flow should actually in the browser create a DOM element, a HTML element basically with the name color picker. Do I need to import you also? Yes. And then finally, as I said, we're going to implement that script. So we're also going to make sure that's loaded. So that's color picker.tsx. And that's basically all we need here. Let's also take the view and add a new, actually let's create it here. Picker equals new color picker, and then we add it there. And now things will be broken. If you go to this view, I mean, we don't see anything here because we haven't implemented the client-side part of it. And actually wondering why it didn't explode in a different way, but let's see that when we get there. So now in SRC main frontend, let's create a color picker.tsx, which was the same value that I had in the JS module annotation. And here we're going to create a class because we're going to do a web component, and those are always classes. So color picker extends React something something, yes. And here we need to implement something, and before we forget it, we also need to register this as a custom element. This is the tag name picker, and then the class that we want to register to always be used whenever this HTML element is encountered. Then finally, we need to implement this render function. The first version is very simple, hex color picker, and why doesn't it autocomplete? Because I'm missing the import. I saw it here. Let's add that, and then it's hopefully better. Yes. So let's just add a return a color picker here. So now we should have everything in place. But we don't. What am I missing? Hello view, it's got a color picker. But I mean, I noticed it didn't. We need to restart the server once more because we added an npm dependency. And now it's exciting. Now we got a color picker there. What we still don't have, or what I still want to add is, first, let's make it possible to add or set the value from the server. So I want to do basically, in my view, I want to do picker.set color some like ff0000 like this. Let's create that thing. We also need to implement it. So what I'm going to do here is, let's name that color also. What this React adapter component gives is a way of passing state to the server and so on. So what we can do here is just set state, give it a name like color, and then the value is also color. And then on the other side, we can receive that value. This render function gets a hooks thing which contains all the things we need to integrate with the server side. So I can do here const color equals hooks.get use state color, almost color, and let's give an empty string as the default value. And now we can here say that, well, the color here is the value of this color variable. So now with this done, I need to save the Java file also. And now actually you see that it's put us in the upper right corner there with the very red color. Final thing, let's also pass values back. So we can add an on change listener here. And this thing actually, it receives a new color. So we just get new color here, and then we need to do something. What we do is that this use state, it actually returns two variables or two values in this array. The first one is the current value. The other is a setter to be able to send updates back to the server. So what we can do here is set color with this new color that we have. And then finally, in the Java side, let's also add a listener for that. So public color picker, and then we add a state change listener color. Let's turn the value that we get into a string, and then let's just here do a notification.show change to color. So now hopefully we got everything in place. Hopefully the hot swap works. So yes, now we can get changes from the server to the client and from the client to the server. So we have a fully functional component. And now from a Flow developer's point of view, I can use this color picker just like I would use button or any other Flow component, because all the nasty details on how do I interact with React, how do I send messages back and forth, that's now encapsulated in this class, and other team members who don't know anything about React, they don't need to care about this. I think that's everything I wanted to show you. So if there's any questions, then now would be an awesome time for that before we wrap up. Are there any questions? Yes, I see one over here. Got the mic incoming.
In the first example you showed with the Hilla component integration, you had a list of greetings.
A list of what?
A list of greetings that you were able to add to. Is there a way to manage that state on the server side then?
Yes and no. It depends. I mean, this is a Hilla view, which means that we probably expect to have a stateless server and so on. You could use a full stack signal. You should listen to my talk tomorrow afternoon to learn about that. But in general, the mindset with these Hilla views is usually that it's stateless. It fetches data from the server. It sends RPCs to the server and gets things back, but it's not stateful in that way. If you want to do it in that way, then I would recommend going this approach instead, because here you have directly a way of setting state from the server. You have a server-side instance that actually contains that state and so on. So actually you can use this approach here with the React adapter element as a way of doing React templates for your Flow views. All right. More questions? I see one over there. Run, Roman, run.
We use the class for the picker, but can we use normal React functions as well? Like a function and then map it to a component?
I mean, the way the integration with Flow works is that it's a custom element. It's a web component. And a web component is always a class. But at the same time, I mean, in this simple example, I'm just returning kind of a very simple render thing here. We can very well kind of say that, actually, let's try that. No, I need to get the hooks. But I mean, I can have a React render function here also, and then I just kind of call that here in the render method. So in that way, yes, I can I still need to have the class there, but it can delegate to a regular React render function. More questions? Either I was way too clear with how I explained things, or then you all fell asleep. Either way, let's wrap up. So I have shown how to use a little bit of React in your Java application to hopefully make it better, not worse. But that might not always be the case. So you need to think for yourself, would this make sense in your case? If not, then just ignore everything I have said. Don't do it just for the sake of, okay, try it out for the sake of trying it out, but don't add it to your production application unless you actually have a use case. Those use cases might be if you have an army of React developers just waiting for something to work on, and you got a Flow application that needs something. It might be if you got existing client-side code implemented in React and you want to integrate that into your Flow application. Or it might be if you want to do client-side development for some parts of the application and you think that React is the right choice for that. And then we looked at two different ways of adding just a little bit of React. First one is create a Hilla view, treat that as a kind of stateless UI component, call things to the server, call stateless services, get values back, and in that way build your application logic full stack, but still the same way, roughly as if you would use just standalone React and Spring MVC or something. Or then the other way is take a React component, create a Java Flow wrapper around it so that you have a Java API for using it in your React component. Without, or just the same way as any other component. And I think my computer tries to say me that we are done now, so thank you.